Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Brothers Discuss. I am Alex,
And I am Chris.
and we are continuing our MCU Marathon, and we've made it to the third movie. It is 2010's Iron Man 2. And yeah, there's a lot to say about this one, I would say. This is arguably this is one of the more like critically panned films of the MCU, I would say. It's up there with like the likes of like Thor the Dark World and stuff like that, or the Incredible Hulk. Um, and I have to say, I don't hate this one. What about you?
Um, I've never really been the biggest fan of this one, but I will admit,
Of enjoy. Um, I don't like. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in this movie, and a lot of it is problematic. Like the big thing that a lot of people bring up is like, this is just essentially a giant trailer for the Avengers.
mhm,
And I agree with that. That stuff is, bothersome to me. I don't like that stuff one bit. But I think the stuff that's in here, the good stuff that's in here, I actually think is really good.
mhm,
I think it's the Iron Man stuff that I think is all good stuff. Like RDJ, he's still charismatic as ever, and I actually really like his character arc in this movie.
yeah,
And I like it a lot more than what we got in Iron Man 3 personally. But Iron Man 3 is a whole other discussion. But in and of itself, and I'll go ahead and say this right now. This is my favorite Iron Man sequel. I actually like this much more than Iron Man 3 because Iron Man 3 is that's uh that's a movie.
ask me like any day of the week, like it's bound to change if I like this one or three more. Like I think right now I'm leaning a little bit more towards two, but that can easily change. They're both really close to me, but yeah, that'll be fun talking about three.
Oh yeah, no, I've got a lot to say about Iron Man 3. um, but yeah, Iron Man 2. Um, like I think like the highlight about his filmography. I think he's more comfortable in doing like these like CG heavy like not stop motion like motion capture performances, that like we saw with um the Jungle Book and the Lion King remakes.
Mhm.
But I think even here with this film we see little bits of like like CG work with all like the suits and stuff like that. But yeah, John Favreau's he's an interesting director because then he also makes like these like low budget films like Chef. Chef's a really good movie.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever seen that.
I've never seen it.
It's very good.
The only John Favreau films I've seen Iron Man movies, obviously. I've seen Elf. I've seen The Jungle Book. I haven't seen The Lion King though.
Also,
Um,
I'm gonna give The Lion King a watch. And we got to I just can't wait to be king. And then I realized I can't do this. I'm shutting it off. And I've never watched the whole thing.
the trouble I would have with watching that is that that's something you really need like hand drawn animation for to
Mhm.
have all of these animals emote. It's something you can't really pull off when you're trying to make them look as real as possible.
Yeah.
But
No, I
enough
agree
of
with
Lion
you.
King.
Yeah.
um,
Um,
yeah, as kind of what you're saying, it's like I love everything with Iron Man in this movie from beginning to end. I think all of that is actually pretty well done. And I like the first half of this movie. I actually really like. I think it holds mostly strong. Um, Everything like where I start to lose the film really is kind of in the second half where I mean sure everything with Iron Man it's still pretty strong and the second half is when we get like some of his best scenes like the one you're just talking about. Um, but it's kind of where I start to, I don't really care about Rhodey at this point. I don't really care about Ivan at this point. All of that kind of starts to fall apart, but Iron Man is the one
mhm.
consistent thing about this movie that I do like.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. um, Action. Not a lot of it in this one,
Yeah,
surprisingly.
it's really dumbed down. I mean, your first big scene is the racetrack in Monaco,
Yeah.
and that's incredibly short. It happens just like that, but it's a pretty good scene. And one thing, like if you pay close attention to this, is that on a more technical, nerdy level that I have to point out.
Mhm.
Iron Man's suit in that fight scene, it's obviously designed to be a lot more portable than any of his other suits.
Yeah.
So therefore, it's not like armor wise, it's probably not as durable as his other suits. And I thought that was a nice little attention to detail because it kind of gets chopped up in that fight. It it,
Hmm.
it, it it kind of gets its ass kicked. But
Let's
yeah,
let's hey, let's talk about that suitcase armor.
yeah.
The Mark V suit, I think, still looks fantastic to this day, and
Oh yeah.
even more realistic than many of the more recent Iron Man suits that we've gotten.
Hmm.
Like, I love the Mark V suit. It
Like,
looks fantastic.
yeah, there's a reason, like, with all the posters that this movie have, half of them are based off the suit he wears at the end of the movie, and the other half is based off of this suit that has like at max 2 minutes of screen time. And it's because
Yeah.
it just
Let's just take a moment to appreciate Sam Rockwell as Justin Hammer. He is amazing. Bring him back, you cowards.
he
And
came
I'm not
back in the one
the one
Marvel one
shot.
shot.
Yeah, but as far as like a movie, I would love to see Justin Hammer come back in one of the MCU movies. Make it
Yeah,
happen, Marvel. Bring him
there's
back.
there's the I mean, there's two Disney Plus shows that come to mind. There's the Iron Heart show and the
Yeah.
Armor Wars show. I mean, those are potentials,
You
but
never know.
I mean, he could show up in anything really, and I'd still be happy if he showed up in
I
Captain Marvel 2. I'd cry tears of joy.
I will not complain if he comes back. I love Justin Hammer in this movie. He's
Yeah.
really and it's all down to Sam Rockwell. I
You
think
see, I love Sam Rockwell's performance. Even then, I still love the character of Justin Hammer. He's
yeah,
just such a joy
like I
because
can't
everyone hates him. It's so fun to watch.
yeah. And I can't imagine anyone else pulling this role off, but Sam Rockwell just like I have no words to describe it. He's just so
It's
good in this role.
perfect casting.
Hmm. And the
Absolutely.
funny thing is that Justin Hammer in the comics is like a much older guy. He's like an old man. So they
Mm.
made him much younger in this film, but I think it works within the context of the MCU.
Yeah.
And I guess sort of another villain before we get into Whiplash is Gary Shandling as the senator guy. I
Brought
mean,
him
granted,
back.
he was not a villain at the time, but then it turned out he was a Hydra agent
It
all
was
along.
Hydra all along.
R.I.P. Gary Shandling. Okay, now
Yeah.
let's talk about Whiplash here.
All right. So
Yep.
he's pretty generic, even for MCU standards. Um, there's not really much to him, and like even rewatching, like I tried to be optimistic. I tried to look at this with like, I tried to look at it the best and brightest way possible, and he, he's not bad. He's not a bad villain. There's nothing really bad about him. He's just not. I don't know like what's missing here. He's not deep. He's not. You know, I don't really care about him that much. I don't really see that much in him. And like I mean, we're at a point where the only two villains we had before this were Abomination and Ironmonger, and like those villains aren't, perfect either. But
Yeah. The problem is that you can see the scenes where there is potential. I think another highlight for me is the scene where Tony visits him in the prison,
mhm.
and he sort of gives his motivation, which is it's actually very good motivation. I do like that scene quite a bit. But famously, Mickey Rourke has said very negative things about his experience working on Iron Man 2 and how there's just a lot of stuff that was just cut out from the film, and it really affected his character as a result of it.
Mhm.
And I don't blame him one bit, to have a good majority of your scenes cut out in favor of, future MCU stuff. Like I understand that argument quite a bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's just another one of those really bland MCU villains, unfortunately. I mean, granted, like you said, I don't know if I go as far as say he's the all-time worst MCU villain.
I
I
would,
think,
my choice for right now is probably at Malekith.
yeah, I'm with you there. Malekith is probably the worst MCU villain,
Mhm.
quite possibly. But yeah, and I'm sure you've heard of all the things Mickey Rourke has said about Marvel now. He
Yeah.
he hates Marvel. He does not want to work with them ever again. It's just, and he's one of those rare instances where you have like someone that in the film industry like actively speak out against the MCU, what they do.
Mhm.
Um, so there is that. And I guess on that note, let's talk about the things that are shoehorned in this movie, all the teases for what's to come down the line.
Mhm.
Because first up, the big one, of course, is the inclusion of Shield and Nick Fury and Black Widow.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
Um. Well, Nick Fury isn't really in this too much. He's only in like two, three scenes in this whole movie. Um, which, granted, that's more screen time than he got in the first movie, but
Yes.
he doesn't do too much. He's just like his scenes are just get your act together so we can promote the Avengers. Those are all of his scenes. Black Widow, on the other hand, I thought she was really fun to watch in this movie.
Oh
Um,
yeah, I love Black Widow in this movie.
yeah, the hallway fight scenes. I mean, she was awesome in there, and
Hmm.
um, I'll give the movie that they did a good job promoting her, even and like her future in the franchise, even though she's just now getting her first movie.
Yep, which has been delayed again.
Yeah.
It is now coming out this July as of right now.
Hmm.
I'm sure it'll probably stick to that release date. Those guys that I get a lot of inspiration from as far as being like a film critic goes. And unfortunately, I do end up really agreeing with a lot he says. And he brings up like lots of like valid points. And the notion of like having Nick Fury be this like bit somewhat supporting character in this film when he wasn't even properly introduced. Like he was only introduced in the post-credit scene of the first film. And to be fair, that's not really a part of the movie. It's just like a bonus scene,
Yeah.
essentially. So, and chances are not everyone that watched Iron Man 2 watched the post-credit scene of the first film. And what that post-credit scene did for those that did watch it, that for those that did stick around, is it made people want to get into the comics and made people want to do like research on who the Avengers are and all that, what to look forward to. And fair point. If you were one of those people, I will admit I was one of those people. We were rewarded with all these sorts of teases in this movie. But I think for a casual moviegoer, I think people will be so confused as to
Yeah,
what
he just
Shield
shows up.
is. He just
He
shows
shows up
up.
and like we're expected to know the at the very least the very basics of this character. But again, you have to think like this is kind of his first full introduction.
The intention was that it's supposed to be like a mind-blowing reveal. When I'm sure like a casual moviegoer will probably be like, wait, what's Shield? What is this?
Yeah.
So that is problematic. Now, granted, I didn't think it was a problem because I knew what was going on.
Right.
I did my good fair bit of research prior to Iron Man 2, so I was well educated in the comics by that point.
Hmm.
So, but I got to be fair here. I don't think that's the way to go about that. I think you should do a better job at world building, and I think shoehorning all these references is just not the way, especially when you're doing it in a sequel to a really really good movie with Iron Man.
Right. And that's something that a lot of movies this day, they suffer with. I'll bring up Rogue One as an example. that shoehorned so much into that movie. And I mean, granted, most of your audience, whether they're fans of the franchise or not, most of them have like definitely seen like the original movies. But I mean, there could be a rare instance where this is like that was the first Star Wars movie a person's ever seen. And there's just a lot that the movie shoehorns in that will really leave an audience member confused. And
Mhm.
yeah, that's just something that happens in more and more movies these days. And this is no exception.
Yeah. But I think despite that, I think Jon Favreau's direction, I think still works well, despite, the obviousness of the studio having their hands like too far in the cookie jar, wanting to set up for future MCU material and such.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it still somehow works. Somehow. I still think the cast is great. I think, you could definitely tell with this film a lot of the scene dialogue heavy scenes are improvised. But a lot of it's, I think it's still enjoyable to watch. Like, I think
Yeah.
particularly like Downey and Paltrow still work well off of each other. Jon Favreau himself, I think, is pretty fun as Happy Hogan.
Yeah.
And okay, let's talk about Don Cheadle here. Here we have Don Cheadle play Rhodey, a role that was originally played by Terrence Howard from the first film. What do you think of him in this one?
In this one, I'm not the biggest fan. I'll give Iron Man 3 the credit here. Iron Man 3 is my favorite. I don't know if I said this in the Iron Man podcast. I might have, but Iron Man 3 is my favorite Rhodey presence in the MCU. And I think Cheadle did a good job there. I'm not the biggest fan of him in here, though. I think he's serviceable, but he doesn't really bring anything like new to the character.
I think he does well with what he's given, but I think what he's given, I don't think is the best material. And there's some writing, there's some script issues I do have with Rhodey in this one. I think the big thing is how Rhodey, he's just an idiot in this movie. I'll just come out and say it. I think Rhodey is an idiot in this movie. And that's by no means me disrespecting Don Cheadle. It is down to the script. I think, he wants to, he tries to reason with Tony and tries to get him to,
Thing he knows how to, use the repulsor blast. He knows how
yeah.
to fly. He knows how to do it.
And I may have missed this, but I'm pretty sure that Jarvis helped Rhodey into the suit. Am I correct in that assumption? Because how else did he get in the suit?
I guess he did. I guess he did.
Good security protocol, Wireman. Good job.
Hey, that's kind of addressed in the Avengers, the elevator security breach.
Oh, that is true.
I guess security is not one of Iron Man's strong suits.
Yeah. But yeah, so I don't think Rhodey entirely works in this movie. Neither does Whiplash. We've talked about him already. And I don't even necessarily blame Mickey Rourke at all. Because like I said, I kind of side with Mickey Rourke. I think we should have seen, and I'm not trying to promote a release the Favreau cut of Iron Man 2, but, there are some small moments where you could see that the potential that Whiplash had. And it's just ultimately it's just more, it's a combination of a script issue, but also a combination of like studio mandates of trying to get all these references and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But like I said, I think the bright stuff in this movie for me, I think, are the Tony Stark scenes. I think, this, especially the stuff with Howard Stark, and I think it just gives some nice introspection to Tony as a character. Though I will say it does feel weird seeing Howard Stark being depicted almost exactly like Walt Disney. I mean, like think about it. Like the videos that you see him in are almost reminiscent of stuff that Walt Disney himself did, and even like the Stark Expo is, I think, is kind of reminiscent to Tomorrowland.
You also have to keep in mind this is before Disney got their hands on this franchise.
Yeah, it was just around that point. Like when they were making Iron Man 2, it was just around that time when Disney actually bought Marvel. But this is still being, distributed by Paramount Studios. And I think, if I remember correct, I think the Avengers was actually the first Disney distributed MCU film. Am I correct?
I think so. It's either that or the first Captain America. I'm pretty sure it's Avengers
I
actually.
think it's Avengers, if memory serves me right.
Hmm.
So that's interesting to see Howard Stark kind of. He's very, very reminiscent of Walt Disney in this film.
Hmm.
Um, yeah. Anything else to say about Iron Man 2? I mean, okay, I guess we could talk about the after credits scene,
Oh yeah.
which I believe is directed by Kenneth Branagh, if I remember, because it's definitely footage from the first Thor movie, right?
Yeah, that stuff is used in the actual movie, so I I wouldn't be surprised if that was confirmed. I think that would be actually.
Yeah, this is one of those instances where sometimes the post-credit scenes are directed by the director of whatever movie's being advertised. Because I know that's the way it is for Thor's after credit scene. I know it's the way for Thor: The Dark World's after credit scene. Now that I think about it, even Captain Marvel, that was the first credit scene was a Russo brothers directed scene.
Yeah.
But yeah, here in this film, we get Agent Coulson going to New Mexico and him discovering Thor's hammer, which
Hmm.
sets up the next film, which is Thor. Thoughts on this?
Um, it's pretty good, and until it isn't that good.
What?
No, like yeah, the first half of this movie is pretty good. I think it's it has a good message. It sets up Tony's arc in this movie very well. Um, and the stuff that I'm not a fan of in like the second half, like Rhodey and Whiplash and um, well, all of the Avengers marketing isn't really up until the second half. The first half's kind of purely the Iron Man story. Um, I think the first half of this movie is pretty good, and then it starts to fall apart, but it doesn't collapse in the second half. It still
Mm,
stands, even if it doesn't stand strong in the second half.
yeah. What's amazing? You just said all that, but all I did was just ask you a question of how you feel about the after credit scene.
Oh, I thought you must have cut out then, because I swear, I thought you just said your thoughts.
Oh
Like,
no,
I
I
thought
was
that was
referring
in
to
regards to
thoughts
the
on the
movie.
Thor scene.
I'm like, oh, okay. Well, the Thor, yeah, all right. There we go. Whoopsies. But no, the Thor scene, I think is it's a pretty good tease.
Yeah.
I don't really remember it too much in theaters, which kind of shocking because this is actually the first MCU movie I did see in theaters.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
yeah, I
I don't
didn't see.
remember.
Uh, Not many people really saw Incredible Hulk, but
I'll be
uh,
honest, the only MC movie I never saw is The Incredible Hulk. I didn't mention
yeah,
this in the last one, but The Incredible Hulk is still to this day the only MCU movie I did not see in theaters.
yeah. For me, it's that and the first Iron Man. I didn't see the first Iron Man in theaters, but so this is the first MCU movie I ever saw in theaters, and even then I knew that was pretty cool seeing Thor's hammer.
Hmm.
And we get a nice like thunder sound and like before the movie cuts to black, or as the movie cuts to black, I should say. Um, yeah, I thought that was a pretty good post credit scene.
Yeah,
Nice.
indeed. So I guess that's about, but I would rate it higher than several MCU movies for sure.
Yeah,
What's your grade on it?
my grade. We do this on a numerical scale, right?
Yeah, it's numerical.
Um, I'm gonna go with a 6.
I am right there with you. 6 out of 10. And as far as ranking it, the MCU movies go, of the three so far, I would say it's Iron Man. Um, this may be controversial. I'm probably right now. I'm probably thinking Incredible Hulk and then Iron Man 2. But
Uh,
I should say Iron Man 2. I still think is a pretty good movie.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. Yeah. All right. I guess that's all we have to say about Iron Man 2. So yeah, thank you so much everyone for listening. And be sure to subscribe and stay tuned because we'll do a Thor discussion at some point, and hopefully soon we'll get to talk about all the other Disney Plus shows and whatnot because I really want to talk about WandaVision and Falcon Winter Soldier at some point. Because those shows, well, so far with Falcon Winter Soldier, they're really good so far.
Yeah.
And yeah, we'll have to do that at some point soon. Absolutely. All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care and stay safe. Bye.